Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
Welcome to Kingdom Stories from Down Under. My next guest, if you weren't seeing him and you only heard his voice and you were from Perth, Western Australia, I'm sure you'd recognise the voice. Most of you have heard him on radio 98.5, especially on Saturdays and Sundays, because he hosts those couple of days. But I'm sure many of you have never met him or have never seen his face, especially now after the haircut.
That's not
So
my mistake.
today here at Kingdom Stories, I have Lockie, or Chris Lockie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You had a long hair. How long was it?
It was, pretty long. Yeah.
2 years, 2.5 years?
It was actually 6 years, so...
6 years?
So I cut it off 6 years ago for the same purpose, and did it 3 weeks ago, roughly on Australia Day, for the same cause again in Powerade, who are an amazing bunch of women who do some great work around the world.
6 years worth of hair growth?
It was cut a couple of times through that period,
Yeah.
but just the last probably 18 months or so where we had actually delayed the fundraising activities, so it became I'll just let it go. And I washed it, but I didn't look after it well, so I'd go swim in the beach, pool, etc. And it was just
Ready
and
to
it was ready, I was so ready to go. When we cut it off, it was literally stayed in one piece, like a big ball of fur. It was horrible. So
You made sure you didn't wash it for a few weeks before?
I know I watched it. It was just so dry. It was like straw. So very happy for it to be gone. That's for sure.
You've got a full skull of hair? Or?
No, not so much. It's been kind of going a little bit over the years as you get older. It's
Well,
okay.
mine, if I was to grow, it would just be like that. Just sideburns.
Well, I did actually go over the hairdresser. I said, look, just give me the Natanael Costea. I'm very happy with that.
Oh, hallelujah. And that was a good, obviously, reason,
Well,
a beautiful reason. It sparked a lot of community discussion and a bit of a topic
That's
for
right.
Saturdays and Sundays for you at the show.
I didn't actually talk about it much because I don't like to, I guess, self-promote.
So I must have seen it on social media more.
Yeah, that's right. I promoted it a little bit on social media because it's obviously it's not particularly towards an agenda.
Yeah.
It's my own personal space, whereas
Sure.
the 98.5 thing, I didn't want it to kind
Yeah,
of take
of
over.
course.
But yeah, in Powerade are a wonderful bunch of people. So they actually women that train in hairdressing of all things
Yes.
in some of the poorest places in the world, including Bangladesh. And they train these ladies in an actual certification so that they can go and earn a living in the cities and then feed their families, bring an income in, their kids get educated, all those sorts of things. So it's a holistic approach.
Beautiful.
So we raised
It's empowering.
It's absolutely empowering, and over the years that they've been going for, I think they've impacted over 300 women alone
And their families.
and their families. So
Their
thousands.
daughters and their sons. And
That's right. So it's a real legacy program as well because it teaches those women to then also teach to pass that baton. So
that's amazing. That's beautiful.
yeah. And it's ironic. I think I said to you, we actually raised the exact same amount this time around as we did 6 years ago.
Wow.
Almost to the dollar. It was quite incredible. So,
That is fun. That is fun.
testament to God's goodness.
So you're a Perth boy.
Very much Perth boy.
As you drove in this area, you knew the area.
I was a little bit actually overcome.
So you grew up only about 3 or 4 k's.
I grew up the road on Wirrabooka Avenue, which obviously becomes Norlamara Avenue.
Yeah. In
And,
Balga or in
Balga.
Westminster?
In Balga, yeah, which is what it was back then. It was all Balga.
Yeah.
There was no Westminster. And there's lots of history through particular locations.
Yeah.
My first job was with, my first job was a 13-year-old boy was running a milk round,
Yeah.
which they don't obviously do anymore.
Yeah.
We used to meet down at the Norlamara shops down here.
Yeah.
My second job was at the supermarket that is now an IGA, which was actually a buy-loan. But even before that,
Just here in Norlamara?
on the corner, just here.
300 metres.
300 metres from here. Even before that though, when I was a kid going to school, I went to a Christian school up the road, part of the Baptist church around
Emmanuel.
the corner, the North Baptist church. It was just called Norlamara Christian Academy, very small, which put it Southern Baptist influence.
So that was your primary school?
It was a private school.
And primary?
It was all age, range from primary right through to high school. I think I was there only for about 12 or 18 months from years 7 and 8, or 8 and 9, one of those two. So it wasn't an ideal place for me or for some of the people that were there because it was quite small. But yes, some church history there.
So you grew up in a Christian family, your parents were Christians?
Not so much. So, long story actually. So it depends how long we've got, I suppose.
What's up now?
Go right back to the beginning, back to the dawn of time when God created man and Eve.
Back in 72.
That's right. Well, even before that, so my father was actually, he was older when I was born. So he was nearly 50 when I was born. Mum and Dad had a lot of problems.
Is that old?
Well, to have a child it is. I don't think I want to have a child at 50 years old. So.
Yeah, I just had a child 7 months ago.
Did you? You're not 50 yet.
No, I'll be 50 this year.
I'll give myself another whole year.
No, that's fine. I'm ready to have another one.
Are you? Good on you. Okay.
I won't tell that to my wife.
Yeah, that's right. She'll hold you to it. So, my dad, as I was born in 1923.
Yeah.
So, as a result, he was there through the wars, etc. He was enlisted. In fact, he couldn't wait. When he was, I think, 16, he joined the RAF, the Air Force in England. And when the war came, he went. And he never came home. He stayed within the military, within the Air Force. He took a posting of all places in Palestine. And a short time after that, he ended up working, he had a job with the Palestine police.
Yeah.
So he was looking after the Holy Land. He was actually patrolling, the Dome of the Rock and the Wailing Wall and all these amazing places. The Holy City, and he had photos which were quite confronting because a lot of them, there were dead bodies.
Yeah.
It was quite a different time back then. A few years there, and then decided he wanted to do something different. Was offered a contract with a rubber plantation in Singapore, or in Malaysia, or Malaya as it was back then, before all the changes. And of course, as a white man going to that particular part of the world, he was pretty much hunted. So we had full-time bodyguards and all sorts of crazy stuff. Met my mum there, who was a Chinese woman working in Malaya, or a young lady. They met. She was working in a cafe. Fell in love, and they decided to get married, and then it became even harder for them because then she was also hunted, being married to a white man, to the point that at night time they couldn't have lights on in the house because if they walked past a window, someone would take a shot at them. And I remember Dad telling me the reason, or the deciding moment for him getting out was realising that, so we made plans to get out. It was only a few days later. He was driving across a ridge with his driver and 2 bodyguards in his Jeep. And all of a sudden, bang, 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 Jeep went down the embankment and rolled. He fell out and kind of crawled under some bushes or something. Just lots of noise and gunfire. He came out of it, it felt like about an hour or so. He actually managed to crawl out because he just hid there for that time. Came out to find his bodyguards and his driver both shot dead. And he just had a bullet hole in the arm and managed to get away. So God obviously had a plan for him even back then. So they came out to Australia. Dad worked for the Stirling Council, of all places, for most of his life here. Nice. So very local as well. And unfortunately they both passed away. Mum had motor neurons a few years back, so that was pretty hard to deal with. And Dad he would have been 86 when he passed away, so a few years back now.
Nice.
Considering he would be 100 next year. So let's put it in perspective. But Dad, Mum and my sister actually, and myself, we went to the church, the Barber Church of Christ, when I was about probably 6 or 7. I remember some vague memories of that. I remember it being a very old building with old pews and an old man up the front who was dressed finely, and there would have been 20 people in the congregation. We got sent out to Sunday school, and I didn't like it at all. Probably due to my separation anxiety. Didn't want to be away from my mum. That was part of it. But to the point that even one time I ran away. I literally ran away from the Sunday school, and they came up the street and chased me down. So that was my first experience at church. It wasn't a good one.
Running away from it.
Exactly, running away from it. And then when I was about...
It must have been 5 or 6.
Yeah, 5, 6, maybe 7, I think.
Do you remember, or just what they talked about?
Oh, I remember it. I actually remember parts of it. Yeah, I remember running up Balga Avenue and Mum coming up.
So where was this church corner, Balga and Princess?
Correct, yeah, with the
old Shiloh.
The old Shiloh Faith Centre, yeah, just next to that.
We bought that church.
Yeah, so no, it was opposite where some of the housing estate is now.
Okay.
So because they were both there at the same time.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because that's the Romanian church, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, of course. So that was my first experience. And then when I was about 11, my mum and sister started going to the Northern American Baptist Church, which there was quite a solid...
So your mum was in the faith?
I think she was searching more than anything. I don't know.
Dad, not so much.
Dad, not so much. No, he was a military man. Had a bit of baggage that he carried with him.
And at Sterling, what was he doing?
He was a kind of a health surveyor, basically a surveyor. So he would actually go out and do checks with the beach patrol and the garbage people and all that, just make sure everything was in order. I remember going to work with him a few times in the car and running around the yard there and seeing all the rubbish trucks. It was all owned by the council, that one yard for everything. Now it's all subcontracted out, of course. So back then it was just everything was that one. And I used to on a Saturday morning, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go with him and do the beach patrol and go and see the guys at the beach. It was such a crazy gig, honestly. The best job in the world. It was done by 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and come home and just probably not healthy for him in the drinking issues that he had at the time. But a lot of, as I say, going back, he had a lot of baggage from his days in the armed forces and trauma, big time. And just never got over it. But God had a plan all along, of course. So I'm 11 years old. My mum and sister go to this Baptist church. I get dragged along, meet a couple of guys that become friends. Mm-hmm. I'm only there for maybe 12 or 18 months, maybe 2 years. Was then, offered to go to the school there as well. It was a very close community. And I don't speak anything against them. Every church has its place and every church has its issues. And, it wasn't healthy for a number of reasons for me. It was a good experience though. And what it really set up for me was that Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he will go, and when he's old he will not depart from it. Because I was indoctrinated with scripture and with the messages and stories of God and real biblical truths, all from the King James, of course, the AD 1611. So a lot of the these and thous are still stuck in my brain when I preach on a Sunday morning. I go, and thou shalt, hang on, I'm reading from the NRSV or the NIV.
Message.
That's crazy. Yeah, the message, exactly. That's like a whole different language. It's great. But so I kind of gave my life to the Lord probably out of fear at that time because, the option was if you don't, you go to hell. It was just hellfire and brimstone. So that was the fear factor. Don't know that I had a true faith at that point. But I knew that there was a God. I had a full understanding and a reverence for God. That was the one thing that I know for a fact back then. But I left the church when I was about 13, 14. We got into my circle of friends. Spent a lot of time at the ice rink up in Mirrabooka. It was there, the original one. Played hockey, played for the state and other things. And it was a great time in my life.
I'll keep playing hockey.
But
hey, that was a good ice skating rink.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Awesome. And pastime, and you could get annual membership there.
I literally, because I lived only a kilometre up the road,
I
was there 5 times a week. That was my thing.
That's phenomenal. It's a good sport.
I literally worked part-time just to earn enough to get into the rink to buy my gear, etc. That was my thing.
I loved it.
Oh, so
as well. Even when we moved here, I used to go here.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, just to run around,
basically. That's it. It's crazy just going around in circles for 2 hours, but it's so satisfying. It's like nothing else. So if you haven't tried hockey, go and try it. But
there's one in Malaga now.
That's right. There's Mirrabooka, Malaga.
There's still one here, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a new one at the back there. It's actually owned by people that I used to play hockey with, the original. And there's now the new Coburn as well.
Okay, so there's 3 of them.
Yeah. So I'm playing hockey, enjoying life, working down the road, in my cars, doing.
What were you doing? What were you working?
I was just in the supermarket, so I was only still going to school at that point. And then even when I finished school, I ended up working full time in the grocery store. Moved into another one, sort of further north of the river, just because it was a full time gig, and continued to play hockey and did all that kind of stuff. Got into DJing. And it's actually a sad moment right now. So I met a guy at the ice rink who was DJing there.
Yes.
And he, a few years older than myself.
That was the proper job there.
Oh yeah.
You had to be good to be a DJ at the ice rink.
Right. So he and I just clicked. We were good mates, and we started kind of just hanging around a bit, and I got really intrigued. I was always intrigued by radio from probably 8 years old. That's a whole other story. I did some work experience back in the day at a couple of radio stations, and that was always part of my DNA as well.
Nice.
And in fact, it was going back again, 1980, when FM radio came to Perth.
Yeah.
And I was an 8-year-old kid just fascinated by it. I used to listen.
You understood what it was?
Oh, 100%. I used to listen with headphones or earphones and a speaker under my pillow late at night. My parents would think I was asleep and I was sitting and listening to the radio. And there was this one voice that I remember so vividly that was almost like a lullaby when I went to sleep at night. And that's one of the things I really remember now, and that's kind of one of the things that motivates me in radio as well, is to be that voice that people need to hear, no matter where they are in life, whether they're an 8-year-old sitting with a speaker under their pillow, or whether they're going through some tough stuff, marital issues or life issues, or just trying to find God. I want to be that voice to them at that time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I met this friend and we became good friends. He taught me so much. In fact, I think he was the first person to really put a microphone in my hand. I was 16 years old, and he built my confidence and taught me some skills around DJing. Ended up, by the time I was 17, I was doing weddings and parties and things like that. MCing. Just really comfortable in my own skin in that. And then started DJing at the skating rink as well. So that was a lot of fun because I got to mix a bit of work.
So did you build your own
console?
Yeah.
Yeah, built a couple of consoles with turntables back in the day, buckets of tons of radio with records. It was just, it was a heavy gig back then.
And there was a massive investment because you would carry all of those with you, thousands of dollars.
There was a record store at Mirrabooka that, they used to get most of my wages for a period of time, I can tell you that. So I, again, literally go out and DJ. I started doing clubs and things as well, and it was about feeding the, I won't say addiction, but it probably was, buying vinyl was the thing. So that was kind of cool. But going back to the story of meeting this man, he was a really good friend. It's almost a mentor in that world. Crazy guy, really crazy guy. But he had this heart. And whenever in our group of friends, whenever there was something heavy, he was the one that we went to. He was the one that carried the load. And I remember he's probably the only man that I ever remember at a really crucial time. He grabbed me and he held me and we just shed tears together as a 16, 17-year-old boy. That was just powerful. Because I don't think I'd ever did that with my own father. And to be quite honest, I'm actually going to his funeral on this Wednesday. So. Despite his confidence and his craziness, he decided that this world wasn't for him anymore. And it's just...
He wasn't in the Lord.
I don't know where he was at. He was always one of those guys that lived on the edge, pushed the boundaries. I often said that I found my boundaries by watching him push past his. That's right. Just knowing that was too far. So pretty sad, pretty tragic. But God uses everything, and I'm sure He'll use this just like He does everything else. So that's up to my, I guess.
When did you find the Lord?
Well, it's a whole other story there. So I was DJing in clubs. Met the woman who would become my first wife.
Were you into drugs or
no? I didn't.
Or alcohol?
Look, drugs, alcohol. My father had some issues, so
you kept away.
I kept away from it. I had a few drinks every now and then, but I always knew. And even then, as I say, that little bit of faith input that was in me, that training up, I had a reverence that I would never go too far because I didn't want to be out of my own mind. I wanted to have that control or that clarity. So there was never, I think I smoked marijuana a couple of times and it messed me up. I was like, no, I don't want this. It's out of control. Never went down that road. And there was always that, I used to see my friends do things that I think, oh man, that's delving into the kind of evil, that's delving into bad territory.
And it's alcohol that opens the door to most other evil things.
Correct, There's a lot of things that lead, they're all gateways per se. I didn't do a lot of that, but I'll tell you straight up, when my dad was 76, I came home. I wasn't living at home at the time, but I came back to visit on a Sunday afternoon and he was sitting at the table and there was a bit of conversation going around with everyone. Everyone kind of left, and I was left there with him. They'd gone out, and I just started talking to him about faith and about what it meant, and I just had this look in his eye, and I said, "Do you want to talk about this? Do you feel like you want to give your life to the Lord to submit at this point?" And he said, "Yeah, I think I do."
Wow.
And he literally prayed there and then, "God, come and forgive me, make me whole, and restore me." And 76 years old, and despite all his efforts through his life to be a better father, to be a better man, to give up drinking and all that stuff, it always failed. This was the turning point. And he kind of became the man that I needed him to be all along. Mm-hmm. And although there was still some baggage there, of course, and there was a lot of just struggles with different things in the family as a result of the past, I saw the change in him from that moment on. It was instant. Wow. And so he passed away not less than 10 years later. But it was just comforting to know that
it was the best decade of his life.
Oh my goodness. Best day of my life, I think, that one. Yeah. That was incredible.
And when did the spiritual awakening happen to you?
It wasn't for a few years. So I was
mid-20s?
I was married when I was 21 and went back to...
Quite early for that period or not?
It was probably early compared to my friends and whatnot.
So you met her where you were DJing?
Working in a nightclub.
Yep.
And
what's her name?
No, I'm not going to say that. So when you're 21, you don't know what you're doing.
Okay.
You just don't. And you think you know what you want in life, but you don't.
Okay.
And without God in your life, there's very little direction. There's very little.
Sure.
You just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. Because I do that anyway. I'm a guy that I don't put a lot of planning into a lot of things.
Yep.
I'll have a very basic outline, and then I'll just kind of go
work it out
and let correct. And that's how I probably went into life and went into marriage. So, long story short, 7 years, 3 kids, and was at a church that was very similar to the churches I grew up in. Yep. Very traditional, very fundamental. And I got on the wrong track and basically destroyed the marriage, destroyed a lot of friendships, a lot of relationships, and found myself in a very, very dark place. This is early 2000s. And if it wasn't for that ounce of faith that was still in me, I don't think I would be here. I'd be like my friend. I would have just ended it. But God had a plan. He had a great plan. And so I made that decision that I had made all these mistakes. I had gotten into this absolute rut and this disastrous life that I created by myself. It was only me that had done that. And perhaps this God, if he is who he says he is, and if the people that tell me who and how amazing he is, if they're right, then maybe he can help me out. Yeah. So I started going to church. So I checked out a few churches. Of course, I went to churches that were similar because that was what I'd come from, and it didn't do me a lot of good. A couple of years back, and I'll do some name dropping, a couple of years prior, I had my own business in audiovisual and was contracted to do a job for a guy by the name of Graham Mabry. Okay. Now, Graham was the host of 6 Hours Nightline and, of course, the senior pastor at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. And from my understanding, what I'd been indoctrinated with was that churches were just very comfortable places. Yeah. And unless you were preaching that hellfire and brimstone, you were missing the mark. So my expectation of Graham was just a average Joe who had a church. Yeah. And when I worked at his place for him...
At 6PR?
No, at his actual private dwelling. Met his wife and his boys, and he seemed like a nice enough guy. He didn't preach at me or tell me I was going to hell or anything. He just kind of was nice, and we had a coffee and had a chat. So that was 2 years prior. So fast forward to I'm going through this crazy time, and after all these churches I visited, there was nothing. There was just not happening. I went, I should go and check out this Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. So I walked in on a Sunday night. It was actually at what was Winthrop Auditorium, Kennedy now, Kennedy Baptist College. Good auditorium there. Walked in on a Sunday night, And it was everything that I had been taught was wrong in church. There was flashing lights and a smoke machine and a band that was playing louder than they should have been, and there was kids jumping up and down wearing board shorts and back to front caps and tank tops, and it's like it's a beach party, you know. But it was something very solid, something real that was keeping me there. And actually Graham spoke that night, and he spoke a very articulate message, which of course, being who I was, I went back and questioned every piece of theology that he'd even brought to the table that night. And he said, hang on, just gave it to me really straight. He was very open and honest and very loving in his response. And so I thought, I'll go back again next week. I got there pretty early because I was fascinated by the music, because I'm a muso, and I was stifled muso in the churches that I'd come from. There was not an ability for, especially a drummer, to actually...
You're a drummer?
Oh yeah,
okay.
A drummer king as well, drummer. But just fascinated with the music. And so I got there probably half an hour, and maybe even an hour early that second night on a Sunday, and I was listening to the rehearsal, I was listening to the words and watching the musos, and some of these guys were professional musos, what were trained and graduates, and just I was blown away. But there was something more than that, and it was the spirit that was moving through the songs, the words, and I started to feel this presence that I'd never understood, I'd never experienced before. And I just sat there in this kind of awe and said, right, God, if you're actually here with me right now, then I need your help, because I'm a mess. I need help. And I just felt overall started crying. I was a mess. A gentleman walked in who, I'm going to say it out loud, he looked like Colonel Sanders. So he had the white beard, white hair, and everything. Lovely gentleman. And he sat down next to me and said, how you going? He introduced himself, I introduced myself. He said, can I pray with you? Yeah, sure. So we sat down and prayed for a while, and all of a sudden both of us were just overcome, enveloped in the Spirit. And this went on pretty much every week for about 6 weeks. I'd go and we'd pray and we'd cry, and God was just doing this restoration work. And along the journey, I met some amazing people. I did some courses in healing and all the issues that I'd had. I won't say they were resolved, but God was working at that time. And the ironic part was that immediately as I started to realise I was healing, He placed people in my life who were dealing with the same issues that I'd gone through. Big time. And they were just God moments where a guy would rock up from Tasmania. He was visiting a friend and he decided to pop into the church, and I met him. I'd been there 3 months myself, and he came and introduced himself to me. I'll never forget this one. He said, are you the guy they call Lockie? I said, yeah. He says, God gave me a name.
Well,
I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I'm from Tasmania. I had to come here to visit my grandma, but God gave me your name to come and talk to.
Wow.
And I journeyed with this chap on some issues for some time to come after that, and just met some wonderful people on the journey. And as I say, He continues to allow you to share your brokenness in order to help people to heal through their brokenness as well. It's like the old saying, who can help, or who's better to help someone who's been through a divorce than someone who's been through a divorce, or who's better to help someone who's lost a loved one or a child than someone who's been through that themselves. Because they can understand, there's
and they know the process, they understand the journey, they know it takes time.
Correct.
And they have the patience to walk the path with you.
That's right. So I'm meeting with this gentleman, praying, and God's doing this amazing work. I start to get involved in the music ministry there, which was just the best thing ever. Some wonderful leaders there, people that just really spoke into my life. Explained that the Holy Spirit's actually not something you run away from, it's something because that was kind of...
And this is a Baptist church.
This is a Baptist church, man. Like preaching the Pentecostal craziness, that's good. So I've kind of, and even in the last 10 years, I think, I've probably been through a real roller coaster between that conservative church and the traditional, the Methodist, exactly, the extreme Pentecostal, etc. And for me, there's a medium ground that kind of, it just encapsulates what the church should look like, what I see in the Church of Acts, for example. So that's a whole other subject. So I met this gentleman, we're praying, etc. There's all this stuff going on, and it was Christmas about a year later that he said, hey, would you like to come and have lunch with us? Oh no, he said, come after lunch and meet the family, have coffee with us. Because I had some stuff on with my kids for Christmas that day. And so I popped around and met his wife and his daughter. They were, I think, at the time going to morning services. So I'd never met them before, and we got chatting. And over the course of the next probably 12 months, his daughter messaged me a couple of times about something to do with church. She wasn't part of the church but had left herself, just because there was no connection there for her. There was no people that were in her demographic, so she wasn't off doing crazy things or anything. She just didn't find what she needed in the local assembly. And so we started chatting back on the days when it was MSN online, and just talking about what church was. And so I said, oh, why don't you come along, I'll take you to another church, maybe we'll go to Riverview, because I was a visitor there occasionally as well during the Phil Baker days. And so I took her along a few times and took her to Maddie's a few times, and different services, different gatherings, and really felt like I was doing something in her life. And you know, her dad was just overwhelmed because she was back in church and searching. And it was one night that we were, she'd come around, we were going to go, I think, to Riverview that night, and we're sitting there, and I always have music in my house, always worship music all the time. It just fills the atmosphere. And we're sitting there, I look down, she's just crying her eyes out. I said, what's wrong? And she goes, I've got to give my life to God. And she just prayed there and called out and asked for God to forgive her and to give her a new life. And she went home, and obviously her dad was a mess. He was just in tears, and he rang me. He's like, thank you. I didn't do anything, it was just God. Anyway, we started to become quite, well acquainted, good friends. It grew a little bit, a couple of years down the track now. And it was quite awkward, because this man who was my mentor, who was a support through my darkest times, who knew every dark secret about me.
Everything.
I'm like, this
you couldn't reverse engineer it.
That's right. And I said, look, your daughter and I kind of, and he said, so what's the big deal? And the day I met him and I started sharing some stuff, he said, I want you to know something. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And he would often remind me of that. Every time we prayed, there was some stuff going on, some healing, he would say, there's no condemnation. Don't walk out of here heavier. You walk out lighter.
You needed to hear that over and over again.
And so many people do need to hear that over and over, because we carry the weight of our past rather than say, well, I've given it over to God now, it's been paid for, it's been crucified, it's gone. Our minds like to play tricks, and the enemy likes to bring it to our attention all the time as well. So he used to always say that there's no condemnation in Christ. And I went to him that day and I said, hey, look, your daughter and I are kind of friends, and I don't want it to be awkward if you have a problem with it. He said, I truly understand. He said, what did I tell you the first day I met you? I said, He says, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. He says, why would I have a problem with it? I know who you are. I know you're a person that God's redeemed. You're not the person that you used to be. And here we are now, 15 plus years later, been married for 10 years, got a daughter, and we're planning a church and doing all sorts of stuff, and God's just been amazing in every avenue.
And he's still the greatest father-in-law you could ask for.
And we live literally, we're back onto their house now, so we've got a gate in between the two properties. I just came from there and went for a swim with the little girl. That's good. They've got a pool, fully maintained pool in their backyard. It's fantastic.
Just open the gate.
Exactly. But going back, I guess more on the church side of things. So I was at Mount Pleasant for 16 plus years. Really just committed there, serving with the music team and the worship team, and doing bits and pieces where I could. And I had a great job, just loving life, and everything was cruising along. And God, all of a sudden, about early 2018, I think it was, 2017, he just said, get out. What do you mean? Get out. And I was reading through a passage in Kings, the story of Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah comes along and says, hey, Elisha, you've been called. And Elisha, who is a farm boy, he's got a plough and some cattle, and that's his livelihood. He doesn't question God's goodness. He doesn't question the call and say, well, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to want me to serve? I can't do both. He literally cooks the cattle, burns the plough, cooks the cattle, has a celebration with his family, and he goes. He goes. And I had that moment, and there's a whole massive story around that as well, where God put one particular person in my life who spoke into that at the right time. And I literally quit my job and just started searching, just started walking the streets and praying and meeting with people, church leaders, people from local council, government, anywhere, anyone that was connected in community. I wanted to know them, wanted to know what they did. And so I did that for a few years. Got very much a vision for the church and for the city based around Fremantle, and then going out from there. And that's when I met Bevan, the CEO of 98.5, through some encounters, and he shared his vision, which was very similar to mine. And there's another story, which is it's a comical one, and I'm sorry to my wife because it's one of those stories. The only time she's ever been wrong, I'll tell you. So when this call on our lives came, I said, I've got to quit my job, and she said, well, what are you going to do? Then you're going to go and get a doctorate in theology or a master's in divinity, further your education in the Christian realm, so you can go and lead a church or do whatever it is that you're called to do. I said, I don't feel like that's going to happen. I feel like God's just going to do something really special. And not knowing a lot about my, radio connection, she said, you're not just going to get someone from 98.5 coming off you a job. Just off the cuff, she said that. 2 years later, I'm having a coffee with Bevan, the CEO, who I just met a couple of weeks prior, and we were talking about the church and Fremantle and other things. And out of the blue, he just looks at me and goes, hey, Lockie, how do you feel about doing some stuff on the radio? I said, what do you mean? He said, we've got a couple of spots free, and we're always looking for someone that's connected at ground level to bring some stuff to the on-air, the content. And I went, okay. And then I flashed back to that conversation with my wife. I went, I can't wait to go home and tell her this.
1-0. No, it's 99-1.
So, that's when that journey started. About 3.5, 4 years ago, I suppose. I'm getting my timelines all mixed up, but I've been there for about 4 years now, doing bits and pieces.
And you do weekends?
So the initial was doing the weekends, and then that led to doing some fill-ins here and there, and holidays and things. We had a couple of other shows that we trialled through some different times.
So you do about 6 or 8 hours on Saturday and Sunday?
So Saturday mornings is till midday.
6 till midday?
No, just 9 till midday officially. Okay. So and we've got that's part of the gardening show, the real estate show, the segment, and some other musical content. And then Sunday after.
David Snell's.
That's it. Exactly.
Does he come in or he does it over the
Depends on the day. So
he's got home opens and stuff.
Exactly. Or golf games.
Golf games.
He's a good real estate agent.
He's a great guy.
He works hard.
I love his pointers, and he's always very objective. He brings value. This
correct.
Every time he comes prepared.
That's right. So, oh my goodness, he's more prepared than anyone I know. It's a lot of it's just physical papers, not data on a screen. He's got books.
But he does his research. He reads everything. He knows the market inside out.
And that's what's made him successful as a real estate agent. And he's a godly man as well, ex-pastor, etc. So, he knows his stuff, that's for sure. That's my Saturday morning and then Sunday afternoons, and I do some fill-in stuff on Sunday.
So Sunday afternoons you start from midday?
3 till 6.
3 till 6.
3 till 6, yeah. Right. So that's just music and a bit of chat. It's pretty light content. But again, it's just a lot of the time about having a voice on air that brings something, and it might be a verse of scripture or a positive message or a story even.
That's what I said at the beginning of the show. People will probably recognise your voice. They've probably never seen you.
Well, I have a face for radio. I don't like cameras. I don't like being in front of people.
So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you got to go to the YouTube.
No, don't. It's all good. We'll have to get a photo of my long hair to put as a teaser.
You're wearing that shirt with Yahweh.
Oh, the hat,
the hat on the shirt, right? Again, radio face. Just on Sunday, I reflected at church about the 4 consonants, YHWH. Do you know much about it?
A fair bit, yeah.
You've heard about the breath of God?
Yes.
I think it's just amazing. Just for our listeners, do you want to explain that?
Well, basically, there's, without going into too much science, the consonants actually represent the breathing in and breathing out process. So every breath that we take and that we give is literally calling the name of God, speaking the name of God.
So it's like, Yahweh.
And if you go back, that's it. If you go back to the original context, the name was so sacred it couldn't be verbally spoken.
It couldn't be uttered. That's why it's created out of consonants.
Exactly, no vowels, so it couldn't be spoken. So even if it was spoken back in the day, it was said like it was Yahweh, whispered.
Because we put the vowels, the A and the E, to make it Yahweh.
That's right.
But in effect, it's like Yahweh.
That's it. beautiful, isn't it?
Which is amazing because everybody says it. Believers, non-believers, you know,
Right.
the most extremes and the most atheists.
Well,
They're
this
all
is the
free.
thing. I started wearing this hat about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Where did you get it from?
I had initially there's a company called oh my goodness, I forgot what they're called now. Art of Homage, I think it is. Yeah, AOH, Art of Homage.
Okay.
So they do a lot of Yahweh worship, all those sorts of things. And I saw it online. I thought I'll get one of those. So I ordered it when it came, and I started wearing it when I was walking the streets and praying. And met up with a pastor friend a few times, and he said to me one time, he says, "You know that verse in Revelation that talks about having the name of God on the forehead?"
Yeah.
He said, "Every time I see you, I think of that verse, and I think that's
Rather than sign of the beast, you have the Yahweh.
Yeah." He says, "I think that's you. You need to, that's your thing is to have that name on your forehead."
Hallelujah.
And from that day, I've never been without a hat. I've got a collection of them now. Wherever I go, I make sure I've got one.
All right, I'll join the club.
Well, A, it covers my head,
Yes.
and B, it actually invokes conversations
Yeah.
in the streets. People will
What
stop
university is that?
People will stop me and actually say, "Oh, the Lord God."
Yeah.
And people who don't go to church, who just have an understanding from past history, stories, or education, whatever it may be, it's incredible. There's
It's
more.
funny because I wear one called Australian Christians. You know,
Oh,
the
yes.
political party.
ACL.
Yeah, it's not the.
Oh, no, ACL, they're called Australian.
It's actually a hat, a yellow hat with Australian Christians, and it's so confronting when I walk into a place. I go, "Oh, what's with this guy?"
Yeah.
What's
He's
with
patriotic and he's a Christian.
Yeah. It freaks people out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But this is not as.
It's amazing how many people in churches will say, "What's your hat mean?"
Yeah.
And you explain it to them and say, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of that."
Yeah.
Yeah, but they obviously know it with the vowels as well in the modern context.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the people that on the streets who just stop you and have a chat. You know, I'm always about trying to find something that'll spark a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so I try and
A hook.
yeah, that's it. Just something different. So,
Like the trailer we just bought from 98.5.
exactly, the coffee trailer is so good. I'm so pleased it's gone to you guys.
Yeah, so just to bring our viewers into this, today we just bought a coffee trailer from 98.5. They used it for Free Coffee Friday, and we're going to set it up here in front of our church, and we're going to, create a bit of a buzz in the area with coffee here in the mornings.
Exactly.
So out of, 20, 30 people who jumped at the opportunity, we were the first in line.
We had so many calls. So Bevan put a message out to a lot of churches
Friday.
and community groups on Friday, and then he wasn't actually available on Friday afternoon. So Connor, the sales guy, and myself, so I'm on the relationship side, we picked up all the emails and phone calls. On Friday afternoon, I'm not joking, 6 hours I was either ringing or texting or emailing people backwards and forwards. And I hadn't even picked up the trailer yet. It was at storage at our friend's house. So, and many people like yourself said, "Well, I'm going to talk to my congregation, I'll come back to you on Sunday."
Yeah.
Now, on Sunday alone, I think I had about 12 phone calls, but you were the first.
Yeah, well, at 11 when the church finished, the Lord said to me, "Make the call now." He said 12, the other churches will finish.
That's right.
So we finished at 11, I made the call.
It was incredible. So the first thing I thought, "Oh, this guy's got to have it." So
Yeah.
we went and had a look today, and
Picked it
you've
up.
driven it back.
It's funny because I said to the church, I sent the photos this morning to the church, and they were, it wasn't even 24 hours since we presented it, and it was already here.
That's right.
So
it's great.
we might even pay for it,
I hope so.
Yeah. So no, that's wonderful, and Tony has been very helpful, and he's willing to give us a hand to
He's such a
get
good
a
guy.
commission, which is
I mean,
phenomenal.
he's another guy you get on the show.
Yeah, I want to get his stories.
Truck driver, just had God changing moment through some stuff that he went through.
Yeah.
Went from truck driving to coffee, and that's his thing.
But he's such a lovely guy, like in a sense his whole life.
He's such an ocker.
Yeah.
Like, he's just full on Aussie truck driver bloke.
Yeah.
But he does coffee and loves people.
He said to me, "Oh, I'm gonna pay a few more months on your license." He said, and he gave me some coffee today. So
That's right.
Yeah, so, by the way, did you pay for that couple today or?
No, he didn't let me.
Oh.
Yeah, I go there often, and I'll
That's why you
force
go.
him
No.
to take my money. Because he goes, "Oh no, that's fine." I said, "Mate, you've got to run a business here." And it is a community outreach he does it for. So if you ever
He's a beautiful soul.
if you're ever in the Bentley area, there's a Waldex nursery there,
Yeah.
and he runs a cafe within that. That's his own.
It's called KIS, Keep It Simple.
Keep it simple.
So make sure you visit. His name is Tony, and you're gonna have a lovely time. He makes one of the best coffees you can drink.
Absolutely.
At Waldex in Bentley.
77?
Leach Highway.
Manning Road.
Manning Road in Bentley, not Manning Road in Manning.
That's right.
Because that was the confusion.
As we found out this morning.
What's next for Lockie?
So through this journey came out, found ourselves in the radio side of things, but my journey with churches and networking and the citywide unity thing, that was kind of my call from the first moment. So I continued to do that. Yeah, WA, Perth Together, all those things. So I continued to meet with people,
networks,
drink lots of coffee, go to GN network meetings. I'm part of the Frio Pastors Network, so we meet every Thursday and pray, but I try and get along to the other ones as well.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 3-4 years, just off my own back. We struggled financially. I had a little bit of a business on the side that kind of just kept us above. And God was good, I gotta be honest. Some of the stories financially that He just blessed us. We're at this really bad place, and all of a sudden we get a check from the tax department for a refund that we didn't expect to cover everything that we owed, and big numbers too. So God just continues to be our provider. But it was, I think, April last year, I got a call from Bevan. So I was doing my bits and pieces on the radio. Yeah. I fill in for the Brekkie guys, I think 12-13 weeks of the year when they're on holidays, because part of their contract is that they have the school holidays off. So I love that. That's a great part of the gig. And I don't think I want to do it full time, but I love doing it for the holidays.
Oh, because it has an end. It's 2 weeks. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So
it's quite early as well.
Yeah, get up at 4:30. So it's not just about getting up; it's about getting brain motivated at that time. So the coffee's a key part of it.
This guy who rides in, doesn't he, or was the guy who rides in early morning.
Oh, okay.
He used to be on the show, on the morning show, and he would ride at 4 o'clock in the morning from Morley all the way down there.
Okay. When we were in Morley, I think there was.
Oh, you were in Morley?
Yeah, so it used to be I think it's the old where youth care now. So around there. But so the radio gig, and all of a sudden Bevan comes along. He says, "This was April last year." He says, "We're looking for someone in a kind of whatever, maybe full-time capacity, to be a church and community engagement relationship kind of person." He says, "We've got salespeople and we've got people who look after our sponsors, but we want someone that engages with the community and the church and drinks coffee and chats to people and networks and makes things happen, joins people together. Are you interested?" And I went, "This sounds really good. What do you mean? What's the catch? What's the KPI? What do I have to bring in?" And he said, "Really, there's not a lot." He says, "Look, you've obviously got to make sure you bring in some value.
Yeah.
But it's a kingdom thing. The board has discussed it, and they want something that's a real kingdom focus." And I went, "Bevan, this is what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years anyway.
Just nobody paying.
So you want to pay me for what I'm doing anyway?" Yeah, pretty much. They were pretty keen on full time, but for me, we've got some church stuff going on. Yeah. And I went, "I think 0.8 will work well." And to be honest, I'm probably doing 1.2 anyway, just with everything, because my whole world's just kind of melting.
Yeah, and with the radio now. For you, it's a 7-day life, isn't it?
It's great though. It's good. Like, I feel so energized.
Not a dull moment.
No.
What does your wife do?
So she just recently actually transitioned over to Carey Baptist College in Forestdale. So she is in the enrolments section there.
Admin.
Yeah.
Good.
So she's enjoying life there.
And how old's your little one?
So she's 8 going on 9 this year. So and she's at our local primary school in Leeming, and a nice little community school as well there, which we get to be involved in some stuff.
There's some great schools around
Leeming. Beautiful.
Rosemine.
That's right. Yeah. And it's the school that she's at is actually an independent public school. Okay. So it's run a little bit different to a traditional public school. Yeah. There's less than 300 kids there, so it's got a beautiful.
Our kids are in church lands, and that's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And they're doing extremely well there.
That's great.
It's a great school.
Isn't Churchlands High the really big one?
Yeah.
That's the 3,000, and Churchlands Primary is the small one.
It's crazy. 500 kids. Yeah.
Incredible. But so the radio thing continues. The connection, the church and community engagement, which enables me to catch up with people like yourself and talk community, talk unity, talk kingdom. And it's so good, and I get to bring people on air and put them in front of different hosts for different shows as well. And to also network. The key is to find needs and to match the resource, and to find resource and match the needs. Because there's a lot of good people out there doing great things, but there's also I think there's a lot of wasted energy because there's a lot of doubling up.
Sure.
Whereas you go, okay, hey, you guys are doing this outreach program, you guys are doing a slim little program, why don't you have a coffee together and figure out what you can do together, and maybe combine some and create some synergy in what you're doing. So that's a huge component of it. We're also very connected with the Uniting Church of all places. So again, that's a whole other story how that happened. Pentecostal Baptist, and I've ended up in a traditional Uniting Church, and
you are accepted.
People
love you.
Yes.
All people love you.
Well, I don't know about love me, but they accept me for.
They don't have to like you; they have to love you.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
They can like you on Facebook, but they have to love you in real life.
That's such a Christianese answer. Have you heard Christianese before?
Yeah.
So Phil Baker at Riverview, he wrote a book called what was it? Crazy Things Christians Say, or something like that. Anyway,
it's a lingo.
Yeah, something. And you've got that language where you're saying, "I love you in the Lord." Which really means I can't stand you, but if I say that, maybe God will still forgive me.
I have no choice.
That's right. I love him like a brother. It's like, okay. But that's good.
You're right. Yeah.
So that continues on. And then the United Church, where we're working with a couple of other churches.
So you're actually pastoring your church, aren't you?
Not officially pastoring, I guess leading a replant is what we're doing.
Is that in Frio?
That's actually in Bicton at the moment.
Okay.
So, there's some real synergy happening around that region as well, some good things. We've got a new minister down at Wesley in Fremantle, in Andy Broadbent, who started a couple of weeks back from Bustleton. He's brought his family up, and I think he's going to breathe some new life.
Andy, the South African Andy?
No. So Andy Broadbent, so he's a surfy guy.
Sorry?
Surfy. Not South African, surfy as in surfing.
Yeah. Didn't they run the surfing ministry in the park down there?
They had some connections with Christian surfers. I know his boys are part of the Christian surfers there.
I know Andy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Used to meet up with him when I would go down to Boston.
Oh, okay.
Because he was in Perth, and then
That's
he
right.
moved down there maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
7 years it's been.
Yeah.
So he did some wonderful things down
He's a
there.
great guy. He ran the church in the pub, you know that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he's back up here.
He's South African.
He's South African? I don't know.
Yeah, he is.
He can't be.
Yes.
Really? He's the most Australian South African I've ever met.
He's South African, but he's a surfy and
great
guy.
Musos, boys at Musos.
He was part of Southern Cross for a while, I think.
Okay.
Great guy, really great guy.
Okay, fantastic.
Small world.
Yeah, it is. So, so we're working together a little bit. We went to his induction last Sunday at Wesley, and so we've got this new evening, we've called it the Eve at Bicton on Sunday nights.
Also just at night.
Correct, yes. So the traditional service...
When do you meet? There's a church?
At the Bicton Uniting Church.
Okay.
Yes.
No morning service?
No, so they've still got the morning, that's a traditional service.
But you have a combined sort of service?
Well, what happened is the traditional morning service is, the Uniting Church liturgy, following the lectionary and all that stuff. It's great. And so I'm there once or twice a month preaching anyway, with a team that also... fill in the other Sundays. John Mess from Life Chapel, he's working with us as well, or I'm working with, I suppose. And I guess the connection with, as I say, with Fremantle, with what Andy sees as well, there's going to be some crossover there. Because I think what's happened is we've got these traditional services in the morning and they're beautiful, but maybe they're not going to bring the younger, new generations in. So we've gone, well, let's not change that because we don't want to take away from the people that...
But let's do something else as well.
Correct. So we've got a Sunday night, and it's a really...
What do you call it?
It's called the Eve.
The Eve.
Yeah.
EVE.
Correct, because it's the beginning of something new. We're not giving anyone apples, so don't worry about that. That's not that Eve. But we have a 1 hour service, roughly 1 hour from 5 o'clock. It's very organic and connected, so it's a community.
Yeah, it's not traditional.
So there's, we bring the musos, 1 or 2, 3, 4 musos, depending on the day. We in the middle of the room, and we put the chairs, and everyone stands or sits around at the same level, and we just get together and worship, go through some scriptures. I might speak for 15, 20 minutes on a particular topic.
Questions, open up the
Exactly. Make it very open forum, very connect group style. And then we pray and sing some more songs at the end, and then, as I say, roughly about an hour, and then we have a meal together. So everyone cooks something up, and oh my goodness, the meals just keep going. So,
I know. We've been doing that for 4 years.
Yeah, okay.
So every Sunday night we have a service and a meal.
Beautiful. It's the best, isn't it?
Families, kids love it, you go from straight to bed, everything's done.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
So because it's a school night, kids are fed, they go home, they have a quick shower.
What time do you start? We start at 5.
5, yeah.
So by 7 o'clock it's all done, so 8:30, and they're home, fed, and just pyjamas in bed.
Exactly.
It's phenomenal.
So so we've been running 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And it was pretty funny actually. This Love WA that's happening, we had a meeting at the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church on Tuesday 3 weeks ago.
Mounties.
Yeah, Mounties. So that was the week leading up to our Sunday night launch at Bicton. On Saturday night, I got a notification to say that Mount Pleasant was an exposure site.
Oh.
So I had to be tested. Quarantined, etc. until my negative result. Yeah, so I went and had a test the next morning.
So you only had a couple of days, or 1 day?
It was only 1 day, but it meant that I couldn't be there at Bicton, so I had to Zoom my server that night. First night. But the funny...
What a hiccup.
Oh, it was funny.
Well, people like you more for that.
It worked well though, so a couple of guys there...
It worked better without you.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I should do that, just sit on my couch and preach. But we had a good turnout, and as I said, all the technology worked really well. I literally hung up the Zoom call and our power went out.
Oh,
so the timing was good.
Yeah.
We probably could have got away with 4G, and the phone maybe would have done it, but it was good to have the proper setup. And then 2 minutes later, I got the message to say negative. I was like, but it was
what a roller coaster.
It was a roller coaster, I tell you. But, God's just great, and He's doing amazing things through.
So many hats: uniting church, community connection with 98.5, hosting, and many other, and tuning forwards.
It's funny. We were talking about that this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I actually got home about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I actually did a service on both my wife's car and my car.
This afternoon?
Yeah, the 1.5 hours before I had a quick shower, went for a swim next door, had a quick shower and came back here. So.
Well, you're a man of many.
It's funny, I'm not a master of any trade, but I'll give anything a crack.
Yeah.
And
You're good on tools, you're good with hands.
Oh yeah, well I had a business on for 12 years where I was doing automation and control equipment, so it was all tools, and I still have my tools and everything. I love to get on the tools, and as long as you don't get grease on your fingernails too much, you can clean because the next day you put a suit on or something, you get a little presentable. But I like variety. Like I've never been someone that wanted to live in a box and take on a career and stay with that. I've always tried different things.
Now you're 86. What would you tell your 50-year-old self?
I'm 86 years old,
and you're telling something your 50-year-old self.
I'm telling my 50. 86. Well, it depends,
There's not much time left.
At 86. 86 years away. Because it's a case of what's going to happen in the next 36 years.
That's right.
What are the ebbs and flows of life and the Christian faith, and
what would you
even economically?
What would you like
if I could
achieve by then?
Well, I consider what would I tell myself 20 years ago.
Okay.
Like looking at that space, because I've lived this 20 years.
All right.
And you know what? There's not a lot that I would say, because I don't want to spoil it. Because life, you can't forecast life. God only gives you so much insight.
Yeah.
Because if we knew what the future held, we wouldn't do a lot of the things that we do.
True. And you wouldn't exercise faith.
And that's it. Faith is not something that comes through knowing. Faith is in the unknowing.
Yeah.
Faith is trust in what you don't understand.
The certainty in the uncertainty.
Correct. So I don't, I might tell myself to buy some shares in Google or something like that, just for a bit of a laugh. But I don't think from a faith perspective.
Not Facebook. Or sell before December last
That's
year.
right.
Before Meta.
Before January this year was a nightmare. But yeah, I think from a faith perspective, just love well. Just go back and say, hey, whatever you do, just love well. Don't expect people to respond the way you expect,
Yeah.
but just love them anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's the key in life, is to love people no matter what. And I think I was saying to you today, I met with Steve Hall for Adult Team Challenge,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks back, and he really threw something in the mix for me. He said,
I had him here.
Oh, okay. He said, you meet a lot of people through life, and you meet some of the most broken, vulnerable, damaged people, and the immediate thought is, oh my goodness, what are they going to get to? How are we going to work with this? That's my thought anyway, when I see people like that. But then I go, well, I was pretty broken as well, and God saw past that. But he said to me, go the next level, and when you see those people, he said, you got to see them as a threat to the kingdom of darkness.
Yeah.
He said, they're actually an amazing person for God when they come to the faith.
Yeah.
The reason they are the way they are is because the enemy has stifled them, has actually put something in their life to hold them back, an addiction or a brokenness or a set of circumstances, in order to hold them back, because he knows what a threat they are. That's why.
To the
darkness. That's why he wants them on his side, so he holds them back. Because he knows as soon as they are entering into the kingdom of light, they have an immediate impact and a lifelong impact. And some of the greatest people I know serving in the kingdom are people who come from very dark backgrounds.
Yeah, you're right.
So it was a real perspective shift for me.
But that means going deep.
It does, absolutely.
That means going maybe 3-4 levels deep.
Yeah,
where most people only can see the surface.
That's right. We're people of visual.
Yeah.
We see something and we work on that. Whereas we've got to be people of the spirit, where we see deeper, we see through God's eyes. And the best way for me to do that is to look at my own life and to look at what God's allowed me to go through and how He's continued to bless and supply and heal and train and develop and bring, character development through all this stuff to make me who I am today, who still has a long way to go.
Sure.
The Lord's not finished yet, I can assure you.
Beautiful.
Because if this is the finished product, it's not quite right.
Well, you know what I learned tonight from you, Lockie? I've heard that life is a process. That there's beauty in that process and in the character building.
Definitely.
And not just looking towards the finish line, but enjoying the journey as well.
Absolutely.
Process.
Yeah, every moment.
And along that path, loving well.
Yeah.
And loving well means loving deep.
That's right.
And not just brotherly love, the shallow love, or the churchy
I
love.
love you in the Lord.
Show me!
Yeah.
I'll tell you a joke on that.
Okay.
Somebody once said, they said, do you really love me? And the guy said, the pastor, he was a visiting pastor. He said, yes, I love you. He said, do you really, really love me? He said, yeah, I love you. He said, well, eat this lolly. And the guy says, look, I'm fasting today. But I would take it. So, loving like a brother can have a very weird connotation.
That's right.
But I think in church sometimes we forcefully accept one another, which is hypocrisy.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the Pharisees. And you know what's interesting? When I'm a hypocrite, everyone else sees it but me.
That's right.
It's so awkward.
Yeah.
It's like the white elephant in the room and nobody else. I mean, everybody sees it except the person himself. And that's awkward.
Well, we live in a day where we are told that it's all about us. Everything's accessible. I say this all the time, how we carry this device in our pocket that we can order food and it comes immediately. I can order a couch and have it delivered the next day. I can buy a brand new car online and have it delivered. I don't have to leave it. So everything is at my convenience, at my touch. So I think I'm the king. I'm the king of my life. And one of the greatest downfalls that is probably known in history was that we took God out of the schools. That's my biggest
concern.
That's why I'm a big supporter of chaplains. I think it's amazing. School chaplains and youth care, phenomenal people. Because what it does is it removes the foundation that says you are a created being, you are loved, but you're also accountable. Instead, we've told kids from a young age that you're actually just some amoeba that happened by chance in this Big Bang situation. You actually have no accountability. There's no purpose for life. So just go out and do whatever makes you feel good and satisfies your urges, basically. So that's what they do. Whereas if you reverse that, flip it on its head and say, actually, you are loved. There's a God who created you with a purpose and a plan. And when you step out of that, it's hard because you're not actually fulfilling your plan. But more than that, you're missing out on the blessing of being loved by the creator of all things, the creator of the universe. If you can get that back into people's minds, it changes everything, because I think there's a lot of broken people out there who simply don't know that they're loved. They don't have families.
Can't love deep either.
Exactly. They don't have families, real families. Some don't have parents. Some don't have brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties, whatever. But they don't know what real love is. And even those who do have those potentially don't know what real love is. Yeah, forgiving, infinite. I spoke on Amazing Love yesterday, and it's still in my head, in my heart. This idea that God says the two fundamental laws are to love God with everything you've got and to love your neighbour as yourself.
Yeah.
And he says on these two commands, everything rests. Everything.
Yeah. They're the hinges of everything.
We get those two right, the world is a different place. You know? So that's my
And that is not negotiable.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you, Lockie.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Hope you love this. I love this conversation. Great. We will call it Love Well.
Love well.
Because I think it's important to love well. Love like Jesus. First you need to experience that love, and then you can manifest that love to others. So embrace the season, whatever season you're going through, and learn to love. Because the big question at the end of life, when you will meet the Lord, will be this: while you were alive, did you learn how to love? And everything is summed in there. I just pray that you learn how to love, and love really well. If you love this content, do share it with other people. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts so we can just be ranked up a little bit higher with your help. So we're on Amazon, we're on just about any podcast platform you can really search for, Spotify, etc., and also YouTube. Hope to see you next time at Kingdom Stories from Down Under. My name is Natanael, Costea.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.